Well, a pleasant good morning, sports fans, and welcome to another edition of the PR Man, the Coach, talking ball on the Ball podcast presented by Sports Kita. I'm Reggie Roberts, your host of the show, and I'm joined by my super cool, ultra NFL analyst, Mike Smith, who's been away doing his thing. Mike, what's up, man?
Hey, Reg, how you doing, man? A lot has happened since we last talked.
What do you call it? It's not football season. What do you call it? The non-football playing season.
That's correct. It's just we're just not playing games. There's a lot of stuff going on.
I don't remember, and maybe it's because, I've got other stuff that I'm working on these days. But, I mean, it seems like, players are changing teams. One team that we're familiar with spent, upwards of almost $250 million, in a couple of hours last week. This quarterback's here, this receiver's there, and yet, there's probably 400 guys who are still free agents who hadn't signed yet, which means one thing: they ain't gonna get paid. They're gonna get paid, but they're gonna get paid like they want to get paid.
They're exactly right, Reg. I was doing some looking at the situation here, and I saw that there was 677 free agents, according to Sports Tech. Thus far, 225 are signed at this point in time, and that means that there's 452 free agents still available. That means only 1/3 have been signed, and of course, we're only a few days into this, and it's crazy. It really is. I mean, hey, you need to be have your head on a swivel to keep up with all the things that have been going on.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. I mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
And hey, there's some guys that have been paid handsomely. Starting off with David Carr going to the New Orleans Saints, $150 million contract. Yes, your Saints, $150 million contract, which $100 million is guaranteed, Reg, with a signing bonus of $60 million when he signed the contract. Unbelievable. I believe there's been 41 players that have signed for $19 million or more thus far in free agency.
It's funny. I watched a little bit of Derek Carr's press conference when he signed with the Saints, obviously for obvious reasons, since I'm a native Louisiana. And the wife had this really, really, beautiful smile plastered to her face. I mean, she had she got 3 boys, got a little girl. And then they showed them later that night. They were at a Hornets game, which Miss Benson also owns. Miss Benson owns the basketball team too. They're sitting courtside. They got on jerseys, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, she still got that same smile she had from the press conference. Well, now that you sort of laid out the contract, I get why she's smiling.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, and Derek Carr's got the biggest smile of anybody. I mean, unbelievable the money that's been passed out. And I get a kick out of listening to the people talk about the draft and who's winners, who's losers. These guys that just got paid, they're the winners. We don't know who's going to win in terms of what teams won, but those guys that got paid early, they're the winners.
I'll tell you what now, it's just, 62 million of that bread he's going to get when he signs the contract, which is insane. And there was, it was back and forth. We were talking back and forth with my brothers and I, who were obviously both all 3 of the Saints fans. They were saying, well, should they get Garoppolo? Should they get, at this point, nobody really knows. You won't know the significant impact of whether this guy's going to help this team. You won't know until 2 or 3 years down the road. But I think right now, as far as winning the press conference and winning at the bank, Derek Carr won at the bank. He completely won at the bank.
Absolutely. There's no doubt about it. And, the 33% that have already gotten paid, they've taken the lion's share of the money that's available. The guys that are going to be signing, as we see here, and we'll talk about guys that have kind of been the losers. When we say losers, they're not losers, but they haven't been signed yet. But guys like Odell Beckham, Bobby Wagner, Dalton Schultz, those guys, they're going to be taking, 1 year do-good contracts. Do good, and we're going to make sure you get paid again. But the money's been given out, man. That's just the way it is in the NFL, and it happens so quickly. I don't know how they did all the research to decide when they were going to do this and how much money they were going to spend. It just blows my mind how quick it happens.
Let's kind of get into it just a little bit. The NFC South, arguably, anybody who follows football knows that was obviously the worst division of football last year. A bunch of weak teams. A team that won it had a non-winning record. And they got bounced out in the first round of the playoffs. But each team, talking about the Buccaneers, the Falcons, the Saints, and the Panthers have made a lot of moves, specifically in the first couple of these days. They were all making moves, including the aforementioned Carr with the contract he signed. Let's talk about the team we both used to be employed with, Mike, with the Falcons. They had a lot of money, from the Matt Ryan, and they spent upwards of $200+ million trying to retool that team. Give us a little bit of a breakdown of what they did and what you think their plan is moving forward.
Well, they got out of cap jail. They were in it, and hey, everybody that tries to go to that, to the Super Bowl, that wants to go out and spend, and everybody does it for the most part, not to the extent that the Falcons did, but they were, they were well over the cap, and they had to go through the process that you go through, because when you overspend, at some point in time, you got to pay the piper. Yeah. And they got $233 million available this year, and they spent it quick, man. They really did. Every team's going to spend it if they've got it, because they have to. That's what happens. And some spend over, some spend right at it, and some are below. But I tell you that I think the jury's out first off on the draft pick that they picked to get the quarterback with Desmond Ridder. Yeah. They've invested a lot in him, and he's got to just show what he can do. Caleb McCary, the offensive tackle, he's the guy that they kept. So what they did, if you want to take a quick look at it, so they added 5, they kept 3, and they lost 3. They lost Mariota, Abdullah Anderson, and Isaiah Oliver. Those are the 3 that they lost. They kept a couple, and then they went and added some people that the GM was familiar with. Guys from the Saints. That was something that they did. Onameta, help me with the pronunciation.
Onameta, he's a defensive tackle.
Yeah, and he was a defensive tackle, defensive end. Really had 1 year of production, Reg, and then they signed Caden Ellis, who was an outside linebacker. They're signing the tackle back, and then Jesse Bates, they gave him a bunch of cash.
Yeah, they did.
What was it, 64 over 4 years?
Yeah.
And then they brought in a backup quarterback. The guy that played in Heineke, that played in Washington. Yeah, 30-year-old. He's definitely not a starter. He has had some productivity as a backup. He can get you through 4 or 5 games, but he's not going to lead you to a championship. But they've been very active. Probably not the numbers of the Carolina Panthers in the South, though. They're the ones that made the most moves. They I think have had 13 moves already.
Including big move where they traded with the Bears. What are your thoughts, Mike, on moving up? I mean, obviously they need a quarterback. They've been trying to sort of figure the quarterback thing out since Cam Newton left, and they with limited to success, obviously. I mean, they moved up, but there's people out there who say, well, they don't like CJ Stroud because there's not enough sample size. They don't like Bryce Young because he's slight, weighs 190 pounds, soaking wet. And they don't like Richardson because he does. There's not enough tape. He's an athletic freak. There's just not enough tape. But they've obviously moved up. Because they like one of those 3 guys. So I mean, I think that's why you traded to get to have the number 1 pick, obviously.
Oh, obviously, and I think they've gone through a learning curve with the owner through the first couple of years, and I'm really as an outsider excited about the move that they made and hiring Frank Reich and adding to a coaching staff that's got a lot of experience. Thomas Brown, fast rising defensive coordinator. They brought in, Thomas Brown's the offensive coordinator. Frank's going to still call the plays, but they've done some good things, and I like what they've done in free agency. They've been very, very active, and they're going to take a shot. They know it's a quarterback-driven league, and they're going to take a shot at the 3 aforementioned guys that you talked about. I don't know that this is a great year at the quarterback position, but this is a quarterback-driven league, and they're going to get pushed up to the top of the draft. There's no doubt about it. And we got to see what they do. But I think it's a great move, and it shows that continues to show that the owner is going to spend money, because he's going to be spending a lot of money for the first pick in the draft, especially if they hit on him.
Yeah.
And have to sign into that second contract, because you take the guy at number 1 is in a quarterback, and then if he's your guy, which there's a 50-50 chance, Reg, as you know, first round draft pick. So it's always a tough decision that you've got to make. But I know this: when we drafted Matt Ryan, we were very, very comfortable, and I don't think that we had 3 guys that we were looking at. We knew that Matt was the number one guy, and maybe it's just a smoke screen for the Panthers, but they got the number 1 pick. So hey, if they know who they want right now, they should come out and announce it. They really should. So
you're right.
They haven't decided, but there's 3 that everybody's talking about.
Yeah, moving over to Tampa Bay, they signed Baker Mayfield, re-signed Jamal Dean. There's all this discussion that last year they drafted Kyle Trask out of Florida. Not very many people are excited about him, and they think a lot of people are saying, specifically some of the guys who've covered this league for a long time, are saying that this could be a really good spot for Baker Mayfield, and that he's going to be much in a situation much like Derek Carr's in, decent defense on Tampa Bay. He doesn't have to throw for 400 yards, doesn't have to make every play. Just sort of kind of don't throw it to the other guys. And they think this could be sort of a re-emergence year for Baker Mayfield. I love the talent coming out of Oklahoma. I don't know what's happened to him. I think sometimes guys get, real talented guys get in the wrong system and they struggle. But I've heard really good things about Dave Canales, and I think he can go and prosper in that offense. What do you think?
Well, they have been the least active team in the South in terms of free agency, but they did add 1 really good player, and Baker Mayfield is very talented in my opinion. I don't know if it was a fit in terms of system fit in Cleveland, but for him to do what he did with the Rams, come in on midweek, he's a talented player. So they've got to fit him into where he's comfortable. That don't put him into don't put a round peg into a square hole. And I think he's a really good player. Tampa has some issues with the cap and their cap money situation. So they were only adding 3 guys, and Baker Mayfield's the big one. The other 2 are just guys on 1-year deals. Greg Gaines from the Rams and Chase Edwards from Denver. They lost a couple players, a backup defensive lineman in Nuez Roaches and Mike Edwards. And then they did some things that I think that really helped. They had to keep Jamal Dean. He is a top corner in this league. And then they kept Levante David on a 1-year deal. So I think they were a little hamstrung. They couldn't go spin, but they did that a couple years ago when they got this guy that wore number 12 that we all know about.
Right.
Tom Brady. Won him a Super Bowl.
Won the trophy. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So the normal process that you go through in the National Football League is when you overspend, there's going to become a day of reckoning that you're going to have to pay. And they're going through that a little bit right now.
Yeah, I like Mayfield. Mayfield's 26, 27 years old. I mean, he's still young. He's right in his prime. I mean, again, watching him coming out of Oklahoma, I mean, big arm, confident, really good leader. I'm looking for him. I mean, I'm excited about him being there because I think 2 things. One, he's a guy that sort of guys can rally around. And I kind of think that he's kind of been knocked around a little bit. And like you said, showed up in Los Angeles midweek, had some big games, played well for them. I'm looking for him to have a really big bounce back year this year. Comeback player of the year. I'm calling it right now.
Hey, Reg, that's a good call. That's a good call. I like that one. You beat me to the punch there, but Baker Mayfield, unfortunately he was in Cleveland, and look, when you go to Cleveland, it's hard. I don't know what it is about that organization right now, and historically it's tough. But, and not to be banging on Cleveland, but I think Baker Mayfield will fit in well and have new life wearing a Tampa Bay helmet. I really do. I think he's an athletic guy. He can extend plays. He's not your traditional drop back quarterback. He's a guy that can run the RPOs, and that's the vogue thing right now. And I think it'll be interesting to see how Todd Bowles and his staff put him on the field and what they want him to try to do.
Well, last but not least, talking about my beloved Saints. They signed Derek Carr, the wife's smiling, the kids are all happy at the game. But I think the signing that didn't get very much attention was the running back. They signed Jamal Williams, who played great last year for the Lions. And I think depending on who you listen to, there's some concern about if they're going to have Kamara, because the Pro Bowl thing, he played all last season. That Pro Bowl thing, he's got to answer for that later in the year, and that's a problem. If you look at the video and you look at what happened, it's not good. So they signed this guy. This guy played really well, led the league, 17 touchdowns. Got into the colored part of the field 17 times, which means he knows where that end zone is. I think he's a good player, and I think that's going to help. He's going to help the Saints.
Oh, absolutely. And you need a running game in the National Football League. It's still going to be about winning the line of scrimmage, and I think Adam Williams, in the year that he had last year, the stats say that he's going to continue to be a good football player. And of all the teams in the NFC South, they were second in terms of their additions. They added 5, and of course the big one, which we've already talked about, Derek Carr. They added a defensive end in Nathan Shepard. Kellen Saunders from Kansas City, a defensive tackle. He was a backup guy. And the aforementioned Jamal Williams, the running back, and then Storm Norton from the LA Chargers. A right tackle. Now they lost a bunch as well. There were 6 losses, but I don't know that there were any really big time players, and we still don't know what's going to be going on with Kamara. And New Orleans is going to be able to do something in the draft because of the draft capital that they're going to get from Denver for the Sean Payton trade, or however you are, trade, swap, however you want to look at it, because they didn't have a whole lot of capital, and now they do. So they're going to be able to do some things, and it's going to be interesting to see what they do in the draft to add to Derek Carr and Jamal Williams. They've got a quarterback and they've got a running back, and now they've just got to figure out what they're going to do around those 2 guys. I think they got a good base there on the offensive side of the football.
I'm just thinking about this. Of all the 4 professional sports, I think the NFL is the most intriguing, especially during the non-football playing season, because this is when you start to put the roster together. It's like a chess. It's like an off-season big puzzle. This piece, you do free agency, trade, whatever. This coach was here. We're gonna swap, get some more picks, and then the other piece of it is the draft. Then we hadn't even gotten there. So
no, we haven't. And
then your roster really starts to shape up with drafts, and then post June 1 cuts and all that stuff. We'll be talking about this until we get to camp. As rosters start to put themselves together and sort of materialize who plays where. I mean, it's an interesting thing, a part about this business from the perspective of how teams put their teams together, Mike.
Oh, absolutely. And the financial part of it, Reggie, is what everybody will be talking about behind the scenes. You know, you're going to be hearing them talking about cap space and
right.
how are they going to, how are they going to fit this guy in and that guy in? Well, they're going to have to structure the contracts creatively at some of the teams. And, right now, if you look at the NFC South with the, they look at the cap, and right now everybody talks about the top 51. Your top 51 players that you have under contract have to be at a certain level. And then we start talking about their total cap space. But if you look at the NFC South right now, Tampa Bay is 31st right now in cap space. That's right now as we speak today, and they only have $1,076,000 in cap space.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and on the flip side of it, the Falcons have $25,201,211. So you can see in the conference with the top 51 as we speak right now, Atlanta's at number 2 in space, Tampa's at 31. Now there's going to be a lot of things that are going to happen, and they'll do some refiguring and redoing contracts, and they're going to get it right. And Tampa's going to not only have $1 million, they got to get above that to pay their rookies. And if you look at their total cap space, Tampa's at 26, Atlanta's at 12, Carolina's at 7, and New Orleans is at 15. So there's different things that we have to look at, but ultimately, by the time we get to the start of the season, we got to be under the cap. And we all know that there's ways that you can you redo contracts and push the money out. There's certain players that we used to call they're the bank. If we have to go borrow some cap space, Tom Brady, bank.
Sure.
Bank. We're going to go talk to Matt Ryan. He was the bank. That's to allow us to go spend money and just extend their money that they're going to get out down the time horizon.
Wow, got it.
Yeah,
I think that's the most interesting thing about the NFL, especially in the offense. It's a continuous story during the offseason as we get closer to the draft, post-draft, June. I think it's something that's going to be worth looking at, and we'll be following it here at Sports Keeda. The PR man, the coach, talking ball on the BallFather Podcast, presented by Sports Keeda. The one thing I want to talk a little bit about moving away from the NFC South, Mike, is sort of, talking about what's going on in Denver with Coach Payton, and that, he's always, he's sort of doing now in Denver what he did in New Orleans. So he got there, he redid the offensive line to help protect Drew Brees, and he's kind of doing it now with the Broncos. Came in, the Broncos, coming off a really, really tough season, probably Russell Wilson's worst season as a pro. And they've signed Mike McGlinchey, 5 years, $87.5 million. Guard Glenn Powers, 4 years, $51 million. And to upgrade the front five, they're going to get Garrett Bowles. Like he's a really, really good player. Talk a little bit about what they did, and is that the right approach? Being that Russell may be showing some signs of going the other direction.
Well, I really believe that Sean believes you win in the trenches, and you want to have guys that can protect the quarterback, and you want to have guys that can rush the quarterback. And at the core, that's where he's going to build his team. And they're going to have some, issues with the draft capital that they're giving up to have Coach Payton as their head coach. So he's going to build, he's going to have a solid foundation with that offensive line, and he's going to protect Russell Wilson and see how Russell Wilson performs in his system. And Sean's very systematic in how he's going to approach this. This isn't in 2 years, they're not going to be talking about firing Sean Payton regardless of what happens over the next 2 years. Sean's going to be there for a while. So he has time on his side. It doesn't have to be a quick turnaround, and he's going to do it systematically, and it looks like he's working right now focusing on the offensive line, and he's going to need to get him some guys that can rush the quarterback on the other side. And they don't have a whole lot of draft capital, so they're going to have to be very creative in how they're going to put together that roster. And Sean's done it. Sean's done it. He's very experienced.
Mike, let me ask you this: as a coach who's been, who's done it several different ways, when you're in your office, you're sitting in your office, and you know, or maybe you don't know. I'm just curious. It's just I'm asking this as a fan and as a former journalist. I'm just sort of curious. I mean, you kind of have an idea of what your team's going to be like. I mean, and based on what you have and what's in the building, what you want to get. Is it nerve-wracking for you as a coach to know that I've got time to get this right? I don't have to get it right this year. Is that something the coaches think about? Or are you thinking win-win now, win-win, and not ignoring what the owner says with regards that you're under no pressure to win this year? Is that how it works, or how does it work?
We're so competitive, it doesn't matter. When we play the games, it's all about winning.
Okay. All right.
In our preparation, but we know that we have roadblocks or things, or situations that each one's a little bit different. When I took over as the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons, that situation's completely different than what Sean Payton is going through at this point in time. That's the great thing about the NFL is there's so many storylines. You know that, Reg.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why so many people are, however they're taking it in, digesting the news and the information about the NFL, it's far and above any other sport in the United States. I don't know about in the world, but in the United States of America.
We were a dumpster fire when you got there. I mean, the quarterback had just gone to prison. The coach had quit. I mean, it was, from a PR perspective, it was the worst situation of the 27 years I worked in NFL communications. It was the worst ever. I mean,
yeah, but Reg, when we got there, we knew that we had to do some team building, but when we played games, we were expecting to go out there and win. And I think that's, to answer your question, no matter where you're coming in, if you're coming in for Bill Cowher retiring, or you're coming in because the guy got fired, right, you want to win, but each situation is different, and you've got to put a roadmap together. And usually that roadmap is discussed when you're interviewing for the job. Right. You're going to say, hey, here's our plan. Now, we've got to be able to pivot very quickly in the National Football League, because so many different things happen, and there's so many ways that you can build your team. You can build it through the draft. You can build it through free agency. You can go grab a guy if he's available, or you can actually go through and trade. So, I mean, there's so many ways to build a team. And that's what's so exciting, and that's why it's so popular, and that's why people are talking about it all year long.
Got it. So it's possible, the way the system's set up, Mike, that in one off season you can go, it's possible because we did it. You can go from the dumpster fire that we were to the playoffs. We did it. So it's doable. It's
very doable, and wouldn't surprise me if I don't know who it is, but maybe it's Cleveland. I don't know. They've made some changes this year, and they've added Jim Schwartz as the defensive coordinator. Who knows? Maybe that's the impetus that pushes them into the playoffs. Who knows? There's going to be some big surprise in the National Football League, and there's going to be some big disappointment. And I think that's why it's so popular. They get to see people succeed. They get to see people fail. And it's like life. It really is. It really is.
I'm gonna call it right now. The two teams that I think that are gonna be really surprising next year. I think if Minnesota, and all signs point towards they're gonna be just as good as they were on offense next year as they were this year. I think defensively they're gonna be way better with Brian Flores as the defensive coordinator and some of the moves they're making. They'll be better on defense. I'm thinking, the quarterback at the Giants, I didn't like him last year, and I like him less now that he's got $100 million in his pocket. I like him less because I think when you are kind of that kind of guy, now that you got that bread in your pocket, instead of getting to the workout, getting to the complex workout at 6, you're gonna probably get there at 8. I think they're gonna take a step back because I think Saquon's pissed because they paid the quarterback and they didn't pay him.
Well, he doesn't really understand it if he's pissed because quarterbacks are going to get paid a lot more than than running backs.
Yeah.
And the running back is probably right now is the most devalued position on the field, and unfortunately he's playing running back, and the running back is very, very devalued in the NFL right now. And
has been a long time.
Right now, if you go and look and see the list of free agents that are available at the running back position, there's probably 25 of them right now that are really good players.
Yeah, a lot.
Fournette comes, Ezekiel Elliott, that comes to mind. Just what I mentioned earlier at the running back position.
Right. A lot of good players. Hey.
Yeah, and they're not going to get paid.
Don't like the Kenny Rogers. Mama, don't let your babies grow to be running backs. Because you're right, it's a devalued position. You're right, it really is.
It is, and they take a beating. They really do, and that's why I think it's becoming a devalued position.
We're finishing up on the PR man and the coach talking ball on the BallFather Podcast presented by Sports Keto. Coach, this thing that with Jalen Carter in Georgia is just sort of. It was news. It was big news that the whole thing about the car crash right after Georgia won the national championship. He had to leave the combine, got arrested, rain, whole thing down in Clark County in Georgia, and then he didn't work out, but he did all the interviews and stuff. And one of my really good friends, who's a scout for an NFL team, was at his pro day, and I called him just to see was what I read accurate. And he called me back and he says, this was a really tough workout. This guy, he weighed a little bit more than he weighed at the pro day. I hate to see a guy who's as talented as he is, read the things that I read about him. So let me ask you, if you were at that workout and you saw this kid and you seen the tape and he comes back a little bit heavy, he said he cramped up and he didn't finish the workout. What would be your thoughts about this guy if you were in a position to draft him, based on what's happening, based on what you saw and witnessed and what's been reported during the workout?
Well, Reggie, the first thing that I want to say is, it was a very, very tragic situation for the two families that lost family members in the racing accident. And Reggie, I think that there's a big issue right now in our society. In fact, I saw on one of the newscasts this past weekend where they had done a special on the drag racing and it's going on all over our country with young people. I don't know if you saw it, but it sometimes they just take over streets in some areas. So in our society, that's something that we have to really be concerned about, because it's very, very dangerous, and people are going to lose their lives. But in terms of Jalen Carter, we have to look at his body of work, and I think I look at the tape. That's their DNA. You can look at measurables, which he has all the measurables. But when you watch the tape, this man can play the game of football. He can dominate a football game. Now, did he have a lot going on in his life and in terms of what was happening at the combine? Absolutely. And you've got to dig deep to find out if this is a one-off situation, or is there something more to it? And is there other things that would bring concern? Because if you're going to make a big investment in a player as a top 5 or top 10 or a first rounder or a second rounder, wherever you're going to be drafted, you've got to go through it. But as a coach, you got to look at the tape. That's the most important thing. And then you have to dive into the other parts of the other parts of it. Is he going to be a fit within the organization? And those are the things that you look at. And yes, they're going to do all kinds of background tests.
Right.
The testing that they do, not only for IQ but just the mental makeup and all the things. There's so many things that goes through. And he probably was prepared to go to the combine and probably in a little bit better shape. But there's a lot of things that have happened since the combine to when he worked out. And you can probably understand why he probably was not on a regimen that he had been on prior to that. But
right.
I'm not too concerned about what he did at his workout. You got to watch his tape, but you definitely got to dig into some of the other stuff, because he was involved in a tragic incident there in Clark County in Athens, Georgia.
Yeah. I just hate to see a young man suffer and go through stuff. Like, right, remember now, I live in a place where there's bike week every year. Okay. Mm-hmm. So, the bikes, most of the bikers that come here, obviously they enjoy, they're here for a week, they're enjoying themselves, they do their things. But every now and again, you see guys popping wheelies and doing stupid stuff. This guy, everybody who, Chip Towers, who covers Georgia at the AJC, I know, and I called him and he said, this guy's a good guy. He said, he's a good guy. And then he said something interesting. He said, if you were there for the biggest interview of your life and you get arrested, come back knowing that you got to get arrested, be arraigned, and come back. He said, Reg, you'd be eating too.
Hey, Reg, just look at your body, right? Look at my body. Hey, we ain't missed the meal.
Hey, no, I had it won't. But he, I said, the guy's probably got a lot of stress on him. So I like what you said. You look at the tape, and the guy's been a dominant player for 2 years, helped him to back-to-back national championships, and I'm just hoping that he doesn't. Hope he gets a chance, and I feel like he will.
Yeah. Well, Reg, we can't go through a talking about the NFL and not have a mention of Aaron Rodgers. The big drama now is who's going to win, the Jets or the Packers? Who's got the leverage, the Jets or the Packers? More drama. Enough already. I'm tired of talking about it. I am. The whole. I got to go to the cave. I got to go chill and sleep on a mat. Okay. Listen. Okay. Just make a decision already. Okay. Just let make a decision. So you can break up with the Packers, so the Packers can give you all your stuff, and they can go move on with the quarterback that they drafted 3 years ago and go do what they're going to do. And then, you guys figure out the conference, because I'm sick of talking about it. I am. I'm just sick of talking about it. Well, it's just another thing that the talking heads, or we all, the fans, get to talk about, because it's an interesting. It's an interesting dynamic. Now they've come out and they're going to talking about who's going to win the trade. Well, if the trade is a good trade, both teams are going to be pissed. They're going to think the other team, hey, you got a better deal. But I think that it's the Jets who win, even though people say they don't have a second option. Well, guess what? Neither did the Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay Packers don't have another option. Aaron Rodgers doesn't want to be in Green Bay, nor do the Green Bay Packers want Aaron Rodgers to be in Green Bay. So what do you think's going to happen? It's going to happen. It's just a matter of when, and there's going to be a dance. But it's not going to be the compensation. In my mind, it's not going to be the compensation that the Green Bay Packers are thinking that they were going to get when this whole thing started. Their situation is a lot tougher, in my opinion, than the Jets. The Jets are going to get a football player, and they're going to get a football player for 2 or 3 years, probably at the most. The Packers are going to get relief from $58.3 million when they don't exercise the option. So they need to try to get what they can get. from the New York Jets. And, you know, it's going to be the leverage game back and forth. They're going to say, well, the Jets, you know, the Jets situation, the head coach and the GM, you know, they're on the line right now. They got to win. They got to win now. If they don't get Aaron Rodgers, well, who else? Where else is Aaron Rodgers going to go? The Packers are not going to keep him. He's going to be somewhere else, and he's decided where he wants to be, and that's with the New York Jets. And let's be done with it, like you said.
Yeah, let's make a decision. Here's the other thing. Once it's all done, okay, it's all done. You go back to Green Bay, the guy they drafted 3 years ago. I mean, you know, Mike, you were coaching with you know when they drafted this guy, you know, I don't know if there's enough tape. There's not enough sample size to know if he can play or if he can't. I mean, what do your NFL guys tell you about this? Can he play? Is he good enough? I mean, can he play?
Well, Reg, when a quarterback gets drafted and he sits for 3 years, you kind of forget about it, right? I mean,
Exactly.
Hey, there's so many news cycles that have come and gone, and he hasn't been able to get out on the field and perform. But he will get a chance next year to be the quarterback of the Green Bay Packers. But hopefully this thing won't drag on. It has the potential to drag on. If it drags on, Aaron Rodgers can get his new team together, you know, and just say, hey, we're going to go down to Miami and we're going to have a workout. And
we'll be talking about.
Hey, and also Nathaniel Hackett, who is now, who is now with the Jets. He and Aaron Rodgers have worked together before. Very familiar with one another. Verbiage is the same. You know, let's get this thing done. Don't let this thing drag on. You know, and we don't need any more drama. The Jets don't need any more drama. But I will say this: Aaron's going to New York, and as you know, Reg, better than anybody, media in New York, they're going to have it's going to be fun to watch that dynamic. It really is. And, you know, Aaron Rodgers is going to be a Hall of Famer. Don't get me wrong. He is one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play the game. But he's going in, and he's been in a lot of situations. But the situation that he's getting ready to go into, you don't know it until you know it. And that means you got to live it.
Yeah, that'd be tough.
So,
a little bit different. A little bit different than the Press Gazette, Green Bay, the New York Times. Different.
Absolutely, a little different animal. Yeah. So,
listen, we'll leave it there. Okay, listen, enjoy your week, man. We'll check it out next week or next couple of weeks, and we'll figure it out, and we'll get you back on it. Another edition of the PR Man, the Coach Talking Ball, and the BallFather Podcast. We'll talk to you soon, man.
All right, Reg. Have a good
great
one.
week. Yep. All right, man. See you, Mike. Bye.